But you got to give a lot of credit to Drink. Drink is the one who's made it cool to play at Missouri. Drink is the one who's made it cool for the St. Louis kids to be here. He's done a lot of great things. He's done some things that haven't been done before. And I think he's done an excellent job of not only making St. Louis, I shouldn't say a priority because I think it's always been a priority, but kind of getting those kids acclimated, making sure they all have some type of role on the team. I think that he's done a tremendous job. So Drake has turned out to probably be the coolest guy out of the St. Louis guys, even though he's not from St. Louis.
This is KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank.
Hello and welcome into this week's edition of Mizzou That's Who here on KC Sports Network, your podcast for Missouri athletics here. I'm Tucker Franklin, joined as always by Maggie Johnson. But this week we've got a super special guest talking Mizzou newcomers to the roster as we continue our 2024 breakdown series. We got Coach Carl Reed with us here. Coach Reed, how you doing, man?
Well, I'm doing good, man. I finally made it to the big time. You guys been doing this podcast, and I've never gotten an invite until now. So I was wondering if I just had to keep working harder, keep pressing. You know what I mean? I've been on a lot of things, but until I got the invite to here, now I know that I'm official.
I'm gonna have to get a selfie with you. So it'll go next to the one that you have. I know you have one with Nick Saban on your wall, so maybe you can put me and you next to Nick Saban.
I got you. Just when I'll be at a game soon, and matter of fact, I think I'm coming up to practice sometime next week. So I'll hit you guys when I get there. We'll get that taken care of.
It's perfect.
Now, listen, before we get started, because I know this is a Mizzou thing, and you're going to have all of these Mizzou people watching this, do not start spamming me because of my Oklahoma helmet. All right?
I was actually going to say something about it. I was going to say something.
Listen, stay out of my DMs. Don't be adding me. Don't be harassing me about my Oklahoma helmet. Everybody knows my relationship with Ronnie Perkins. And listen, if you want me to put a Missouri helmet on here, it's on Toriano Pride or Drake to send me a Missouri helmet. So don't get in my DMs. Get in Drake's DMs or Toriano's DMs because they are the ones that are responsible for making sure I have a Missouri helmet in my office.
You know, we've had some Oklahoma fans listening to our clips lately, so maybe they won't get so mad at us when they see the little clip once they see your OU helmet.
Yeah, I do have some love for Oklahoma, but I love them all. Anybody who took care of one of my guys, I keep a good relationship with them.
Love that. As we're going to dive into kind of some newcomers here. The transfer portal, completely different realm of college football. Missouri, I think, is doing a very good job in the transfer portal, getting a lot of guys that are going to come in and be contributors. One of those guys I want to start off with, you already mentioned him, Toriano Pride. Just kind of talk about what he brings to this Missouri Tigers defense.
Well, he brings experience. He's played in a lot of games. He's got a lot of snaps already in college. He brings a competitive fire. He's won a lot of games as a high school player, was involved in a lot of big games. But what Toriano can do really well, he can run well. He's a faster guy. He has great body control. He can cover the ball in the deep parts of the field. And I think that he brings great closing speed that you kind of need to be able to defend the guys that are in the SEC that are great route runners.
One of my favorite things about Toriano, obviously, is, and I'm going to use it in air quotes because I live in St. Louis, is he's a hometown kid, right? He is like Luther Burden, and he's good friends with Luther Burden. Also played against him. I think he said they started playing against each other when they were 10 years old. So I love that. Yeah. I love that because it's another player that you get from, and I don't know if you want to say in-state or whatever, from the area that has decided that Mizzou is cool, that it's cool to play at home. And I love that about Toriano. And I think he even said in an interview that everybody kind of joked, not him, but fans were like, why is Luther Burden playing at home? And then over the last couple of years, he's like, well, look at him now. And he's like, I want to be a part of that. And he said he knew, I think 6 weeks into his last season at Clemson, that he wanted to be a part of that and he wanted to come home. And I love that about him.
Well, recruiting, Maggie, can get crazy. Obviously, I was coaching Toriano in high school when he was going through the recruiting process, and he could have went anywhere in the country. And I think that when you're in a situation and you look at the time where Nick Saban is recruiting you and Dabo Swinney and Ryan Day, those programs at that time were probably a sexier pick. You would have assumed that you were going to be better positioned if you went to those programs. And Drink was just getting things going on the right track at Mizzou. It was still kind of an unknown thing, but you got to give a lot of credit to Drink. Drink is the one who's made it cool to play at Missouri. Drink is the one who's made it cool for the St. Louis kids to be here. He's done a lot of great things. He's done some things that haven't been done before. And I think he's done an excellent job of not only making St. Louis, I shouldn't say a priority because I think it's always been a priority, but kind of getting those kids acclimated, making sure they all have some type of role on the team. I think that he's done a tremendous job. So Drake has turned out to probably be the coolest guy out of the St. Louis guys, even though he's not from St. Louis.
I do love always seeing Drink pull up in his helicopter, coming out, dropping in the helicopter. That's got to be, those high school kids, they see that happen. They got to think, oh, man, like this guy's got a helicopter bringing around. That's got to do something for the recruiting.
Well, it's big time, and it shows you the investment the program is making because that's how Kirby Smart comes in. That's how Nick came in. That's how Lincoln Riley and guys like that came in. So it just shows that Mizzou is trying to compete at that same level, and they've started to do that.
It's been really good. I mentioned the transfer portal. With Toriano, he comes in at a cornerback position that lost a couple guys to the NFL. Like, the development is there. There's an arc of development with the position coaches, with the defense there. Do you think that kind of played into it a little bit, too? He looks at a couple of corners that just went to the NFL that were just drafted and now going to be playing on Sundays.
Well, not only did they go to the NFL, they were developed well. So you look at the way they were developed by Coach Pogue and the way that they were coached and prepared for that level, and those spots are going to become available. That makes it a fit for you. It's more of a fit than it is a homecoming, so to speak. You're looking at a system, you're looking at a scheme that you're going to adapt to very well, and that the opportunity for you to come in and play is there. And, I think that the pull of the program, pulled them back in that direction.
And not only were they developed at Missouri, but Chris Abrams-Drain came in as a wide receiver. And I'm not sure if he came in as a 3-star or 4-star wide receiver, but it was a wide receiver. And Ennis Rakestraw came in as a 3-star. So if you see them getting developed as these, a position that wasn't supposed to be cornerback, and then as a lower star, you start thinking maybe in your mind, okay, what can they do with me with a maybe more natural talent? And I think that could be exciting for players.
Well, and then what Coach Drink has proven in his staff is that they can develop guys for the NFL. They've done it across several positions. When you think about Chris Abrams and Ennis Rakestraw, but then you got Tyron Hopper. You got the guys that we had up front last year on the defensive line. When you look at what happened with Cody Schrader, and obviously Luther Burden is projecting as a top 10 pick. So if you're a guy that has NFL aspirations, you're looking at Missouri now a lot different than you were looking at them 3 years ago, 5 years ago, maybe even 2 years ago in that recruiting cycle.
Absolutely. Let's stay on the defensive side of the ball and talk about another guy in the transfer portal. Corey Flagg, one of those guys that transferred in, middle linebacker here. He comes in from Miami, a senior transfer here. He comes presumably for Blake Baker, who he had a relationship with, obviously, as one of his defense coordinators. Blake Baker leaves. He chooses to stay at Missouri even after the transfer portal reopens after spring ball. Do you think that's a good, strong telling of how he feels about being in this defense, Coach?
Well, not just the defense. I think that Drake has done a good job of managing the players, right? We talk about guys being players, coaches, and that doesn't necessarily mean that you're a guy that lets anything go. But when those guys come into the program, he does a good job of building relationships with them and pulling guys close to him, because in this profession, you're going to lose assistant coaches. You're going to lose coordinators. You're going to lose position coaches. You're going to have a hard time keeping them. The money has just gotten crazy. The offers have, so the head coach has to be the consistent piece to the puzzle. And so you have to make sure that guys aren't running in and out of your program because they had the freedom to do that now. Even if you're an offensive guy like Drake, I think one of the biggest moves he made is bringing in Kirby Moore so he's not committed to calling the offense anymore. He can build strong relationships with those defensive guys. And so when you lose a Blake Baker, Corey Flagg doesn't walk out the door with him. He stays because he sees the role that he is in the culture that Drake has built at Mizzou.
And I think something with Corey Flagg, too, is that he's kind of used to this. He had 3 different defensive coordinators when he was at Miami. So I think when he probably did his visit to Mizzou, it was about the program and not just about Blake Baker. He probably met guys like Luther Burden and those guys that were there and made those bonds. And he was like, I want to be a part of that. And that, once again, goes back to Drink and what he's done to the program to really build it up and make it what it is.
Well, if you're a player right now, at some point you got to settle your feet. Even if you go to a couple of different schools, you can't make chasing coaches the decision maker in that. Because coaches, I'm telling you, they're here today, they're gone tomorrow. I mean, some of the offers these guys are getting, they can't afford not to take them. So just because the coach left, the scheme is not really going to change. And, you know, it's only one SEC, right? So if you leave, kind of where are you going? So once you get settled in, it's hard to leave, especially over a coach leave, and that's not the head coach.
Yeah, absolutely. Staying on the defensive side of the ball before we take a quick break here. I've seen some clips coming out of practice of this guy, Chris McClellan. My goodness, he is a ginormous human being. It looks like he is going to be a problem. A guy that Oklahoma fans felt pretty confident that he could transfer to Oklahoma. Ultimately, comes to Missouri. I think this transfer class here kind of have sparked that rivalry back between Missouri and Oklahoma fans a little bit, I should say at least. But a big guy. Missouri has him listed at 6'3", 320 pounds. What do you think he kind of brings to this defensive line after they do lose some of that NFL talent?
Well, number one, he brings a guy that's really tough to move, you know, and he has some athletic ability, and he can rush the passer through the A gap or the B gap, and he does an extremely good job of using his hands. You know, and the good thing, you know, you bring up the Mizzou, Oklahoma piece. College football is really fun when you got rivalries, when you got fans that hate each other and fan bases and kids that are really excited to play one another. And a lot of times how these recruiting battles end up sparks the flame of how some of those rivalries are going to go. So I think that Chris McClellan steps right in it, but he's a guy with NFL potential all over him coming from the Florida Gators. He's got big-time upside in the way that Mizzou plays their defense.
I know some Oklahoma fans will say that they don't think that this is a rivalry because the record is so lopsided from, 50, 60, 40, whatever, years ago. But we talked about this a couple of weeks ago. We're playing different football now. This is a new era of football. The Drink's recruiting better than he ever has. Mizzou's playing better. We're getting better players, transfers, all of that. The transfer portal wasn't even a thing, back then. So yeah, getting players, even recruiting and being in the same conversation with teams like OU and Texas A&M for these types of players just changes the game. And you can restart a rivalry, right? Like everything kind of starts over once Texas and OU join the SEC, in my opinion. And that could be a different opinion from what Sooner fans think. But I just don't think that you can look at things and be like, everything's going to be the same as it was in the Big A. Everything starts over.
Well, you got to look at it, Maggie. I understand why you look at it like that. And I also understand why the Oklahoma fan looks at it, because we all wanted advantage, right? So Oklahoma is going to hold on to history, right? They had a great history.
Great history.
They won a lot. And Missouri is going to hold on to what's happening now, because Missouri has been a downtrodden program for a long time. And now in this new era, boom, you got not only Drink shooting life into it, but NIL and the way that the state has come together and the businessmen have come together to support NIL has given Missouri an advantage that they've never had before. So the Missouri fans are going to cling on to, well, right now in this new era, this is made for us and who we are and what we want to be. So it just depends on what side of the aisle you're sitting on. But it does make for great conversation because in the end, nobody cares about yesterday.
Very much so. Those are the guys on the defensive side of the ball that I really want to talk about. We got some offensive newcomers that we'll talk with Coach Reed up here in a little bit. But first, I got to tell you about our friends at Home Field Apparel. Maggie and I always rocking Home Field Apparel on the podcast. Super exciting that they've got their can't miss kickoff. Maggie's got the Missouri baseball shirt on, which is a sleeper. That is a sleeper on that website. I love a good, like a Truman logo, like Truman doing anything. Love that logo. But what they got going on at Home Field right now is they got the can't miss kickoff going on. They got the can't miss kickoffs, and you cannot miss them. They drop on Friday, 9 a.m. Central Time. Get in there, get those boxes. The exclusive shirts in there are fire. I think they got the best box of any of the schools in at least Kansas City area. They've got some great designs. They got the Blue Bonnet Bull designs. They got Big 8 Champs design on there. Good stuff. Get in there at homefieldapparel.com, and you can use Mizzou 24 for 15% off your first order. Too many numbers I got to remember. Mizzou 24 for 15% off your first order at homefieldapparel.com. Go check them out. We're going to talk offensive newcomers coming up right after this.
We appreciate you supporting KC Sports Network by listening to our podcast. You have helped us become the highest-ranked Chiefs podcast network in 2022 and 2023. And don't forget about our daily Substack newsletter, the best written analysis you can find on the Chiefs straight to your inbox every day. kcsn.substack.com.
With big wireless providers, what you see is never what you get. Somewhere between the store and your first month's bill, the price you thought you were paying magically skyrockets. With Mint Mobile, you'll never have to worry about gotchas ever again. When Mint Mobile says $15 a month when you purchase a 3-month plan, they mean it. Say bye-bye to overpriced wireless plans, jaw-dropping monthly bills, and unexpected overages. Mint Mobile is here to rescue you with premium wireless plans starting at just $15 a month. Worried about losing your phone? You can use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and bring your phone number along with all of your existing contacts. You can ditch the overpriced wireless with Mint Mobile's deal and get 3 months of premium wireless service for just $15 a month. To get this new customer offer and your new 3-month premium wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/KCSNMTW. That's mintmobile.com/KCSNMTW. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month with mintmobile.com/KCSNMTW. $45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details.
Whoa, man. Now listen, let me tell you something. I've been on some really big-time shows, but they don't do their advertising the way you just did. You just get some fire for you. Your sponsor needs to give you a little bit more money for what they did with what you just did. You got built-in commercials and the whole nine, man. You put more passion into that than Paul Feinbaum does on some of the commercials. Now I gotta send that clip to Paul and tell him he got his deal up a little bit, man. You did your thing for the apparel company, man. I hope that they gave you a free merch card and they give you a little more money than what they're giving you, man. You need to send them this clip and tell them that I'm gonna negotiate your next deal with them for you, man. They got work to do.
Yeah, we'll work together on that one. I'll make sure to clip that and send that to him. I appreciate the bump there. Your check's in the mail, by the way. Thank you for that. Let's talk offensive for the Missouri Tigers because look, here's the thing about the Missouri offense. They return a lot of guys. They've got a lot of returners, but they added some very quality pieces in the transfer portal, kind of like they did on the defense side of the ball, adding transfers. Let's start in the trenches. Since we ended in the defensive trenches, let's start in the trenches here. Caden Green, obviously the big one. That's the big one. Now, there's been a lot of buzz about him playing guard, and that's because of Marcus Bryant transferring in as well. They got 2 big offensive linemen there. Thoughts on how they are up in the trenches there, Coach?
Caden Green is a really, really good player. He's going to play in the NFL. He could play tackle. You know, I talked to Drake a lot, and when the recruiting process was going on in the portal, you know, for these guys, I mean, Caden Green was a guy that every person wanted. Like, he could have went anywhere. So, once again, you're talking about an in-state guy. You're talking about, so from a state standpoint, obviously he creates buzz and all of that. But Marcus Bryant is special. Like Marcus Bryant, not to take anything away from Caden. Caden's a pro. He's going to be fine. But Marcus Bryant at left tackle is special. He's a kid that I've been watching for an awfully long time. If you look at his tape, his clinic tape from SMU, the way he uses his hands, his leverage, his feet, he's a guy that is going to play in the National Football League for a long time. So guys should be really, really excited about Marcus Bryant and what he brings to the table.
What do you think it was about Mizzou that would make a guy like Marcus Bryant choose? Do you think it's the development over the years that of offensive linemen at Mizzou? I mean, I know obviously we were Joe Moore semifinalists last year. They've just gotten better. Mizzou trenches, that's been our best. You know, Tucker and I talked last week that, you know, we had some secondary guys get drafted. It's not super common at Mizzou. Usually we're trenches. We're a trenches school.
Yeah. Brandon, the offensive line coach, he's one of the best in the country. He's developing a reputation as a guy that you can go to and really develop if you want to play in the National Football League. He's great on the recruiting trail. He's great teaching the game. He's great coaching the X and O part of the game. He's really a unicorn of sorts. Most guys can recruit, but they can't coach. Or they can coach, but they can't. They can coach the X and O's, but they can't individually develop and get you better. He can coach on the field. He can develop guys and improve their weaknesses, and he can recruit. He's the total package as an offensive line coach. So now when you think about getting a Marcus Bryant, when you think about a Caden Green transferring in, as long as he's the offensive line coach, Missouri is going to be a destination spot for offensive linemen.
What I do love about that, too, I've mentioned a couple of times I was down at O-Line Masterminds there, got the opportunity to go and sit in on that conference. Marcus Bryant was there, Caden Green was there, Armand Mimbo was there. Like, they've got those guys sending them down there and putting them around some of the best offensive line minds in the country at that conference there. So that's really a positive sign to see, is like those guys getting down there learning around a lot about the good minds.
Talking about Armand, Armand is not a newcomer, but I mean, he's a guy that NFL scouts are talking about also. You got multiple guys that are going to play in the National Football League. I've had multiple NFL scouts, multiple agents looking for an introduction to Armand. So you know that he's a guy that is on everybody's radar.
Do you think that this is an offensive line that could go from a semifinalist to a finalist or even a winning, like a Joe Moore winning?
The Joe Moore Award a lot of times is a team award, so it's going to depend on how much success they have. You win 10 games, you make it to the SEC championship, you find your way into a 12-team playoff scenario. Now all of a sudden, you got a real shot at the Joe Moore Award. And, I got to give Aaron Taylor a call, the founder of the Joe Moore Award, one of the founders. And I got to ask him exactly where he has the Missouri Tigers right now in terms of offensive line on his watch list. And I'm sure I can get some information and see where they at. But, it's all about dominating, playing dominant football and showing that you can still run the ball, even though you lost Cody Schrader in protecting the quarterback with Brady, but they got the guys to do it.
You mentioned the running back room. We'll get to the couple of new guys that they brought in. Hearing very good signs of both from Marcus Carroll and Nate Noel, but like that offensive line, I just want to run through it here real quick. As of now, with the depth chart listed on our lads, Marcus Bryant at left tackle, Caden Green at left guard, Connor Tollison, who has developed very good in these last few years, has been very impressive with his development. Cameron Johnson and Armand Mimbo. That's a pretty salty offensive line. I'll take those guys, and I think that those guys will do a really good job paving the way for a Nate Noel and a Marcus Carroll as those two guys coming into this. Let's start with Carroll first as he comes in from Georgia State. A couple Sunbelt transfers that Missouri gets here, the running back. Both of these guys put up some pretty good years in that pretty stout conference, truthfully, in terms of Group of 5 football.
Well, if Cody Schrader taught you anything, it ain't where you from, it's how you come,
Yep.
So Cody came from the D2 ranks. So both of these guys, had they stayed where they were at, I think they still developing the NFL quality backs. So I think with those two guys, and remember you also have Jamal Roberts from St. Mary's in the backfield that's having a really good camp. I don't know that any one of them will gives you the individual production that Cody got, but it's not many backs who can do that. But I think that with those three guys in the rotation, you're still going to have a very successful ground game. And Carroll looks like a guy early who could carry the load if needed to be.
I preach Coach Looper on this podcast all the time and just what he has done at Mizzou since he's been here. And I mean, you take guys like Tyler Beatty, and, you know, he was a decent recruit out of high school, but nothing that you would have thought that he would have done. He was a backup for, you know, a few years, and then he got his chance and just exploded. And then he comes and he takes Cody Schrader, a D2 transfer out of Truman State, and makes him what he is. I just don't see how he just hasn't failed, you know, and I think because he hasn't failed at what he's done, I think he's one of the best running back coaches in the entire country. I believe in what he can do. And I just don't, I think with Nate Noel and Marcus Carroll and what they've done at their schools, I just don't have doubt behind this offensive line with the threat at running with the threat at quarterback, especially with Brady, who can run, who can pass, with the wide receivers that we have. I just don't have any doubt that these running backs can be successful on their own as well.
Curtis Lupe is the total package as a running back coach. And I think when you evaluate running back coaches, sometimes if you have a great back, people don't necessarily give the running back coach the credit that they deserve for developing guys. But when you look at the fundamentals those guys play with, having the ball, protecting the ball, which is number one, having the ball in the right hand, depending on what side they're on the field or whether it's running, guys who've been able to succeed in zone scheme and gap schemes, guys who have developed into being guys who could catch the ball out of the backfield and run routes out of the backfield and add that to the game. Then the art of pass blocking. Not a lot of backs are great at pass blocking, but he's been able to develop tons of guys over his long, storied career that can do all of those things, and he's very elite at coaching that position.
And to bring in two running backs, too, as I mentioned, both had really good success at App State, Georgia State. Nate Noel at App State. Heard good things from him from camp so far. It really sounds like this Missouri team has two running backs that they feel like that they can reliably trust on, which is a big, especially with the position of running back is such a position of attrition, right? Injuries happen there. There's a lot of things that need to happen for a good running play to happen, right? But to have two guys that you feel comfortable in running any play with, short yardage, long distance, two guys that you feel like could shoulder the load, I think is really big for this team that does have a guys like Luther Burden, like Theo Weiss, that can beat you over the top, that can beat you over the middle. This just adds another wrinkle into this offense to make it even more dynamic.
Well, what it does is it balances the offense. When you talked about Theo Weiss and Luther Burden, but you got Mookie Cooper as a slot guy. You got Brett Norfleet.
Yeah.
You could start to make a case he could potentially develop into the number one tight end in the country. He's got that type of ability, that type of frame. And so now what you're doing from a quarterback position, you're giving Brady Cook what is real balance. Any single guy in the offense that touches the ball is a threat to score a touchdown. You don't have any black hole in the offense. Guys that they can catch a pass, but they really can't. They're not going to score. The guys you hand it off to just to move the chains. Any dude right now that is going to touch the ball in the Missouri offense is a threat to score a touchdown. And that makes your offense very deadly, especially when you have the imagination offensively that Kirby Moore has.
And it takes so much pressure away from Luther Burden, because I feel like in 2022, when we were getting to that point where we kept losing all these close games, everyone was like, just give the ball to Luther, just give the ball to Luther. And then last year, you just had so many people you could give the ball to, and it felt so good, because Luther even, he got hurt in that Georgia game, and he got hurt in the Memphis game too. So you got kind of nervous because you were like, oh no, like what would we do? But there's just so many options now. And I like what you said. I like Jamal with Roberts. I know that Drinkwitz does too. I I see a lot of potential in Kawan Lacey as well. So I just think there's so many options. And even if somebody isn't the number one running back, you can divvy out these passes and you just become so much more of a dynamic running game. And it allows you to keep defenses on their toes.
You're absolutely right about that. I forgot about Lacey, another special young guy. I mean, so this is an embarrassment of riches that we haven't talked about before when we talked about the Missouri Tigers. There's talent all over the football field.
Last thing before we get you out of here, Coach, really appreciate the time that you've given us. But any freshmen that you got your eye on? I know that they had the high 5-star that's coming in on the defensive side of the ball, Williams Nwaneri. Maggie just mentioned Kawan Lacey. Any other freshmen that you guys got your eye on who could be a contributor for this Missouri Tigers team?
Well, I think it's hard for freshmen to come in and play right now with the type of team that you have and the experience that you have. But Williams Nwaneri is going to be a guy that's going to play. He's as good as any defensive line prospect that I've seen on tape in the last 10 years. And I coached some incredible D linemen myself, and I've seen pretty much everybody. But he's a guy that jumps off the film. I think that he would be a day one impact guy for virtually any college program in the country. And the fact that he stayed home and decided to play for the Missouri Tigers is not only going to be big for the Tigers, it's going to be big for him as well.
Yeah, I love that. I'm excited about it. I tried not to talk about it too much during his recruitment just because you never want to jinx anything. We talk about this on the podcast, especially last year. We talked about getting Mizzou'd, but I don't like to talk about it.
Hold on.
I know. Gabe said the same thing last year. I know.
What is getting Mizzou? I heard a really good friend of mine that's a Mizzou grad. I'm not going to say his name on the show. He might not want me to. He said something about being Mizzou. What do you mean by that exactly?
It's when you let your hopes get really, really high, and then they do something it doesn't even have to be dumb, but it's like you get in this position where you could get up high and then you just plummet down. Basically losing in the SEC championship by letting Trey Mason run all over you for 400 yards or however many he had, or losing to Oklahoma twice in 2007, or the South Carolina kick in 2013, even though that ended up not ruining our season, but just things like that.
When it comes to recruiting, there has to be not so much emotion on the local guys, right? All of them aren't great fits anyway, okay? And so you have to look at it from a football standpoint. You get a really good player in Caden Green that comes home who's a great fit, but Marcus Bryant, who's not from here, is just as important of a piece in a card. So although you do want the really good local players to stay on, that's not necessarily necessary for you to have a lot of team success.
Which I actually think, even with the new Missouri law, and I know a lot of people talk about it all the time, and they're like, that's the only reason Missouri's been recruiting better. It actually hasn't made, if you look at the top 10 Missouri players that have been staying around in the class of 2025, I think the class of 2024, I think Williams Nwaneri is the only one in our top 10 that stayed in the state of Missouri. So I agree with you. I think Drink's done a great job of going out of state and getting guys to buy into what's changing at Mizzou.
Hey, listen, when I'm winning, I don't care what anybody says about what the only reason is I'm winning. I just want to keep winning. I wouldn't care if it was because of NIL, transfer portal, local kids, out of state kids. It's like the great Al Davis said, just win, baby.
I think that's a great note to end on. Thank you, Coach, for your time. We really do appreciate it. That's going to do it for this week's edition of Mizzou That's Who. For Maggie Johnson, for Coach Reed, I'm Tucker Franklin. We'll talk to you guys next week. Got another special guest coming up as we continue our breakdown of this Missouri Tigers roster. We'll talk to you then.